Hello, in this lecture we will take a look at how to use this client side of Blazor, so Blazor client side. And here we have a very simple, very basic, the general template for the Blazor client side app. So the difference between client side and server side is that client side runs completely on the browser using WebAssembly, whilst the server side it uses a simple WebSocket, kind of the usual SPA single page app arrangement. So here we will just go through some of these pages, how they work we will see, and then we will try to do a very little task ourselves. So first of all, let's launch it. Let's launch it and see if it does in fact work. That's the first thing you want to do, because again, these templates are quite young, so you never know what might happen to them, and it may take a few seconds to load. But remember, this is mostly what you have on page, and you would usually tend to have a sort of a backend, additional project for the backend. So we will look into that at the hosted Blazor, hosted client-side Blazor lecture. That's what we will look into. And as you can see, we have our little template loaded. So we have the home, and you can also see, you can take a brief survey. We are asking you to take a brief survey. Of course, the technology is new, so we want some data. And if you see some issues, probably should tell them about it. Okay, so let's go to the counter, let's say. And basically what it does, you click on it, and that number increases. Now, if we go say to fetch data, we get some data. So that's simple, that's what we get. Now let's turn this off. Let's get back to the actual project, and let's take a quick look at how this all works. Now, if you have already seen the server side, this will be quite similar in terms of syntax, but we will see several differences in how this actually is arranged. So let's say if we go to the startup is quite empty. It is very empty, in fact. We have app, add component, app, that's it. Of application, the app Razor, that is. You add app Razor, and that is the route for it all. That is the route, so this is the sort of general route which will start the routing. And if we go to one of the pages, let's say the index page, we can see that the page has a route, that default route, and you get all that default stuff. So this is the first page that you will get. And also you see this survey prompt. So if we go to shared now, here we will find the layout. We'll find the main layout, and then we have some components. So components are kind of the interesting thing here, because you can actually create this page and you can insert it into another page as you would insert any HTML component, any HTML element. So let's say we have this survey prompt, just like that. We have all that HTML code, that C# code also, and then here we have in the Razor, in the index.razor rather, it is a simple survey prompt. So that's all simple, nice and great. Now what's important to note here, you do have to have the .razor file. It's not .cshtml, although they might look similar, but in .cshtml you are using Razor. But here in .razor you're actually using the Blazor. So it may be a bit confusing, but for this to work, for the actual development on the client side code, on the front end code, pages, the right functionality on the pages, you need to use Blazor, and for that you need to use .razor, not .cshtml, but .razor. That's very important to remember. So now if we take a look at this main layout, so main layout, it inherits layout component base. That's important because this is going to be the sort of the main thing. And then as you can see, the body part is basically where you would load all the elements, or the rather pages in this case, according to the route. So this gets loaded no matter what, and then you can use that routing system. So again, if we go say to fetch data, you can see that you have @page and then /fetch data. So if you use that route, the page will be retrieved, and in turn it will be inserted in the place where this little body thing is. So that is again important to remember if you're gonna change something, but usually I would recommend just sticking to this general template. You don't really need to do any changes. I mean, you probably can remove the nav menu, you don't really need it. You might have different layout, although if you go to the nav menu, it's actually kind of nice and neat, more towards the left, sort of a left menu, and you have a toggling. So now if we get to the actual C# on front end part, so we looked at this nice and neat navigation system, but let's get to the important and to the most interesting part here, which is actually quite interesting. So let's go to say let's go to counter. And what we see in the counter, the functions, right? Functions we see. So you could think of this as a JavaScript, as a script tag for JavaScript, and that's where all those functions would go. This is quite similar, but again, this has a stronger type and all that, and this is C#. So let's take a look at this variable. We have an integer set to 0, and then this integer, this variable, is declared with, or rather stated in this paragraph, in this specific place for the paragraph, with @current count, the @sign, the variable name, and that's it. You don't need to do anything more. Nothing more you need to add, and you can't really add anything more like that. So you have that, and then you also have this little method, C# method, increment count, and then on click, right here the button is here, and then you have on click event, you have this @increment count. So this is important to remember, that you call the method with no parentheses, just like that. You just do the method name, and that's it. It has to obviously be in some event. It could be on click, on change, on something else. It can't just be laying around everywhere. Okay, so we have some of the basics out of the way. We have some of those basics. So now let's try to create another page. Let's go to nav menu. First of all, and as you can see, we have href. So href, basically as any link, it would navigate, but in this case what happens, the link goes up to that link box, URL box in the browser, but the actual whole thing doesn't change. Only the body changes, the one I've shown before. So let's get to the pages and let's create a new one. Let's get a new one, and you can do razor page. Let's see if we can. No, it actually throws an error, which was unexpected. But what you simply do, you go to add, you go to new item, and let's see, we need a content page. See if we can find something in .NET Core. We need to look for it. So we only have Razor view. We still don't have the .razor file. For some reason it does not appear. But we are good to go with the view. Now again, you will see that it is .cshtml, but we can easily change that. So let's do test page. Test page dot razor, just like that. Add. Okay, we have the add. Let's delete all that. We don't need it. At least most of it we don't need. But we need the route. So that will be at page, and then the actual route slash, and let's say test page we need, and that's it. We have our route. So first of all, without even adding anything, we want to test if the navigation works first. So let's do nav works. Nav works, little paragraph. If it works, we will know. Now let's go to the nav menu. And in the nav menu, let's actually copy one of these. Let's add another one in here, just like that. Let's paste it. And we have fetch data here. We don't need fetch data. We need something else, and that is test page. And here as well, test page. Let's do test page. Now let's launch that. I do believe it should work. We have the link, we have the button, the name for that button, and we have the actual page. So it should work perfectly, but you never know what can happen, so we will see what happens. Again, the most difficult part here is the navigation. You have to set it up right, and we will also take a look at how to do the same thing with the element declaration, as I've shown before, using that page as an HTML element. So let's click on that. See, okay, nav works, and it actually works quite perfectly. So we can turn it off, and we can create a new one. Let's do another one, new item. Let's find Razor view, and just very quickly, let's try to do test element dot razor. Let's see if that works out. For us. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. You never know. So we have that, and let's do test element. So the element will be the same thing as we had with this survey prompt. As you can see right here, you have this one, and it was displayed, I believe, in the index. Yes, right here, just like that. So we will have to see if it works out for us. So let's see, do test element displayed. Okay, we have that. Now let's go to test page, and let's put in the test element. Like that. Let's see if it works. We are going on a hunch here, but it should work. We just need to see. Again, this navigation stuff is quite useful, but you have to be careful with some of this stuff. Have to be very careful. I would recommend for now just sticking with the clicks and the URLs and the routes, just like that. But as you can also see, the test element is in fact displayed, so that works as well. Now, the way you could actually use that is you could create several elements, and then just kind of wrap them in some container and then display them one by one. You wouldn't need to load in that way. You wouldn't need to load the whole, or rather each element every time you need to reconnect to that specific page. So that is quite neat. And now we can go to this test page, and let's write a little function ourselves. And actually, let's do something a bit more exciting. Let's do a little loop. We will do. So let's do functions, just like that. Open it up, and you have your functions. So now let's say if like that. You obviously need some statement. Okay, so let's do a little variable. Let's do int tst equals 0, just like that. And then we'll need some void, say tst change. So basically we will change the value. And if it's 0, we won't do anything. And if it's not 0, we will loop. Loop through some elements. We'll use a loop. So let's do else. Let's see if I can do else properly. Okay, it seems I can, and I need the actual statement here. Okay, so let's say tst equals to 0. Do a little paragraph. As you can see, you can write right away the paragraph and all that. And let's say nothing to display. Now here, if there's something to display, I will write a little loop, while, or rather I will write for, not while. While is not good for us. We need the number. So I'll write for, and we will try to do something very interesting here. So you'll see how it all changes on change. And binds in several ways. It will bind, so you'll see all that soon enough. There's a B, and I. I can, the I needs to go like that. Okay, perfect. It should work perfectly. We just now need to change a few things. So let's do input. We will learn how to bind those values. So we have our little input, and let's do type just in case, text like that. And then you want to, from the input, you want to get that data to this variable. So how do you do that? It's very simple. You simply need to write bind, not tab index, but bind. You need bind, and then you will bind with this tst, just like that. So we will see if that works out. Again, you never know. We will see if that works out, but we want to actually run it, or rather we don't need to run it. I don't believe we do. So let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. I believe we have a change there. So let's see if it responds properly, or if it doesn't respond. We will see. Again, you never know what can happen. So we will see, we should see at least right away that we have nothing to display, nothing to show for. So nothing to display. Now let's try changing that, and let's see. Okay, so we do have that. As you can see, it binded, and then we had paragraph with the value inside it, 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's try something else, and let's say, let's do 29. And as you can see, I have now 29. But what you may have noticed is that if I write a value, say I add 9, and I go down, it doesn't change yet. Now the reason it doesn't change is because you need to lose the focus from that input box for it to actually bind. You need to lose the focus like that. I lost the focus, and if I go down now, you can see I have all those 299 elements. So it's all nice and neat. As you can see, you can bind it in 2 ways. Now, one more thing we probably should look at. We should look at something else. Is the function. We've seen one before, but let's try that again. So let's say I have a function void, and what should we do? Let's try to change the value here, the TST value. Let's see what happens then. Let's do TST change. So what we are really looking for is how to actually call up this method. How to call it up. So let's do TST change, and then TST equals, let's say 10. Okay, so it's 10. TST is going to be 10. Now we need to do that on click. So you write on click, and then you write at, and then you write TST change. That's it. No variable passed through. If you wanted to pass through a variable, you would need to use a lambda expression for that. Okay, so we have that. But usually you would actually want to keep the variables not in the properties here, not in the parameters rather, but just laying around somewhere in here, properly put in their places. So also you see this error. Now I'm going to try and launch it. Let's see if it works. Sometimes you'll get these errors on these methods, variables, whatever you have, and it won't actually be an error. It will just be that red underlined as if it was one, but it won't affect anything. It won't be a real error. It will be a false alarm. Hopefully we will fix that soon, but for now you have to be careful of that. If you see that, just launch it and see what happens. So let's get here, and the button is very small. See if I can. Okay, so it works perfectly actually. I just click that button, doesn't have any text. I'm not sure if you can properly see it, but a very tiny little button, and when I clicked on that, the value binded in not even in 2 ways, but in all ways. It binded. So we had a change on the if statement as well as the actual text box. So just to repeat that, if I go here, if I go back and I click that again, you see that it is in fact 10, and then we have those elements, and obviously since we are using for loops I, it goes from 0 to 9, not from 1 to 10. And with that we will end this lecture, and in the next lecture we'll get to know the hosted client side, which will basically be the backend and this client side thing in kind of one solution, but as several different projects. So you'll see all that later.